Hi, John. Thanks for letting us use your reading room. We need more space today because we're replaying this recording that Grandma sent us. It was a hit, and friends invited other friends. You know how it is? Now there are 18 of us, and we don't fit in the living room at home.
Hello, Bella. Make yourselves at home. You have the whole afternoon to enjoy the space. Chris will be available to help with the light and sound equipment.
Yeah, Chris is a cool guy. Grandma always talked about him to us. Thanks. Hey, John, you already know the story of the genie written by old Billy. Why don't you stay with us to hear the recording? We have extra printouts here. How many of your group are in the building?
Okay. I was curious to know how teenagers react to old Billy's words. Yes, I know this story. It was born when Billy was still very young, maybe 16 or 17 years old. Let me warn the others. I don't think they've started reading the Chronicles yet. Thanks for inviting us.
Hi, beautiful people. We're all here. Chris, please dim the lights a little and play the recording. I know we'll have a longer session this time.
Bella, my sweet girl. I chose a fun story this time. I hope your friends like it. Kiss to the
Tiffany.
gang.
It's her. She's
Where
back.
is she?
Where is she?
When will she
Why
show up
doesn't
here?
anyone
She's
tell
back.
me?
How come? But how come?
Calm down, guys. You're setting a bad example for the young people. You're messing up their event. Behave.
But it's Tiffany. After so long without news. How is this? She is Bella's grandmother. Nobody said anything. What a good surprise.
Yes, she is my grandmother. She was in Spain, crossing the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. Now she's pilgrimaging to Rome and then intends to go to Jerusalem, if her legs hold out.
So, folks, now it's story time. If you keep insisting on parallel subjects, the kids will get confused. Chris, please put the recording to run. The visitors are here because of this. When it's over, we can clarify everything about our dear Tiffany. We already know that she is fine, and that she has not abandoned old Billy's notes. Pay attention to the genie's story. You will be surprised.
The Genie in the Prison. The master stumbles upon an old lamp, and out comes a genie offering him 3 wishes. The master thanks him but rejects the offer. Immediately, the genie is startled and asks, "What do you mean?" The master reserves his right to remain silent and continues with his firm steps. Dismayed, the genie reappears before the master, saying that it's impossible that he doesn't have a single wish. The master returns the question to the interrupter, who becomes even more bewildered and thinks to himself, "This is the first time someone cares to know anything about me." Embarrassed, the genie replies, "Freedom, all I wish for is to be free." The master applauded and smiled, saying, "Then be free, I make your wish my wish." Flattered, the moved genie clarified that that wish wouldn't count, because his freedom was conditional on granting 3 wishes to a single person. The master stopped walking even as he was crossing back and forth on the sidewalk. In the middle of the street, he looked into the genie's eyes and said firmly, "You have nothing of a genie about you, you're very stupid. You seem like one of those elephants tied to the tamer's little stool." Somewhat offended, somewhat hurt, and entirely frustrated, the genie moved away, and when he was preparing to re-enter the lamp, he stopped, knowing that if he did, he would have to stay there until someone else found that object. Besides, enjoying the outside environment was very tempting. This would be his first time disobeying the rules and regulations of genies, and also the first time he questioned those very impositions. Worse still, he recognized himself as stupid for not considering his own strengths and potentials, exactly like the idiotic elephant standing still, afraid of a shitty little stool. 48 hours, that was the maximum time a genie could survive outside his lamp. After that, he would dissolve like a slug covered in salt. After a lengthy tour of the city and having inspected several nightclubs, the genie decided to have another encounter with the man who had refused wealth, health, and knowledge, the most common of the 3 requests in exchange for the genie's freedom. What kind of person can this be? And he even says that stupid is me, he thought aloud. Again before the master, the genie apologized for bothering him and informed him, "In a few hours I will either die out here or live in there for an indefinite time. I need you to make the 3 wishes before that so I can free myself from this condition." The master shook his head and made a big pout with his lower lip. The master's irritation and impatience with that insistence were obvious, but he decided to give that desperate being 2 minutes of his attention. The master added, "My wish is that you be free. Free from your own stupidity. And don't come to me again with all this nonsense of 3 conditional wishes. That doesn't exist, it's just a concept that you accepted as true, but that makes no sense. Be free and stop following me. But I will melt if I don't fulfill my destiny. Your only destiny is to be free." The genie thought he knew everything. After all, genius should encompass precise data analysis. If he was really a genie, his information should be exact. Only it wasn't. The genie hadn't even noticed that the crazy man who had refused wealth, health, and knowledge was, in fact, a very evolved master. The hours passed without obstacles, and the deadline for the genie to return to the lamp or melt arrived. What did he choose to do? "Melt," he shouted, looking at his lamp. "I'm tired of living like this, better to leave this condition. Let me melt with a minimum of dignity," he decreed his new destiny. Only it didn't happen. Weeks, months passed, and the genie never returned to the comfort of his lamp. In truth, they lost each other, and the genie questioned his genius because as a genie he should know everything, especially where his lamp was. Other doubts began to orbit the mind of this now man, self-baptized John. For example, and mainly, his beliefs as a genie. Out of nowhere, from one hour to the next, without having fulfilled the mission of the 3 wishes, he found himself free. His recurring question was about his stupidity. How could he not know the basics, and how everything he believed in was really just a pile of distorted concepts polluting the understanding of the world and himself? Everything was confusing before it became clear. Freedom had stolen his magic powers, and the new human condition was also imprisoned by other factors. The ideal would be to become a free genie, but all that remained for him was indefinite freedom, something as abstract as it was intangible. Becoming human was not in his plans for freedom. Years later, burdened with back pain and diminished memory, John grew tired of waiting for chance to bring him back into contact with that disturbing figure who had completely confused him, making him trade limitations. This hope kept him optimistic about recovering the self-esteem lost when he discovered he was stupid. Now, old and still stupid, John didn't suffer the pains of doubt so much. He hardly remembered his genie days and rejoiced when he heard the birds singing. He found a different kind of freedom in mental dispersion. It was enchanting to find himself abstracted from everything and led only by the spectacle of life flowing independently of all concepts. Dementia, less mind, gradually seduced him, and at some point he realized he was excluded from general limits. He was no longer a genie or a man, he was just life allowing itself to perceive life within and outside himself. On one of those ordinary afternoons, John was walking without great expectations, and suddenly, a genie appeared before him. The exotic being offered him 3 wishes, and John burst into uncontrollable laughter. This was the greatest surprise that destiny could orchestrate, and John could barely control his muscles due to the outburst of unrestrained laughter. Naturally, the young genie understood nothing and somewhat awkwardly repeated the offer, adding the advantages of achieving wealth, health, and knowledge. "Ha! Oh, where is your lamp, my friend? I don't remember tripping over anything, let alone rubbing a cloth on it." John exchanged, leaving the inexperienced youth somewhat uncomfortable. "Excuse me, I don't understand what's so funny. Perhaps I didn't express myself well? I am a genie and I am offering you financial freedom, perfect health, and answers to all questions. What's so funny about that? And why would I accept that now that I'm old? What good would all that do me at this stage of life?" "Well, sir, you can change your requests, you can favor other people then? And what do you gain from that?" John asked as if he didn't know the answer. "I would be obeying the law of genies. For every 3 wishes granted to the same person, we have the right to make 1 wish of our own. And how many wishes of your own have you already made?" "It's been centuries of waiting to get out of the lamp. This is my first opportunity," the young man replied with a humble air. "And what would be your own wish?" John asked, hoping not to hear that answer. "I want to be free." John bit his own tongue, squeezing it with all his might to avoid uttering any word that would alter the young man's story. After a few moments, John understood that the strange man, who had once refused his offer, knew what he was doing. So John sweetened his voice and said tenderly, "You are free." Immediately, John suppressed his smile and continued on his way without looking back. He knew that the young genie would question him again, exactly as he had done with the master. And so it happened, practically an emulated repetition of that encounter until John realized that this could cause suffering to the young man. John didn't want the young man to have the same story and decided to change his attitude. John invited his new friend for a more relaxed conversation, and the 2 chose a park bench facing the waters of the bay. There, John revealed that he was also a genie and told his past in search of freedom. John wanted to do differently from the master and give the attention he would have liked to have received. So, after a whole afternoon of camaraderie, John concluded that young genies are indeed stupid, because all the explanations and examples narrated there were useless. The young man absorbed nothing. The strange man in the end hadn't been rude as imagined. He had just saved his breath on something whose outcome he should have known. Where could that man be? John thought, returning from his meeting in the park. The next day, John was already prepared to meet the young genie again, who would arrive breathless, counting the hours and afraid of turning into salty slug slime. "Hi, young genie, I'm going to tell you something that you will only understand when you get old. You yourself, a young genie, and like all the ones I know, you are totally stupid. Young and stupid genies only hear what they have allowed to settle as reality and become deaf to the truth. You are not going to melt. I told you that before, and the information went in the left hole of your head and must have come out in one of your stinky farts." That's how John greeted the poor fellow, who, trembling with fear, gave a forced smile, saying, "Good morning, I hope you're right. I don't want to melt. I prefer to keep living even in the condition of stupid." John threatened to find it funny but quickly regained his composure for the seriousness of the moment. He should maintain austerity to prevent the young man from falling into the disgrace of freeing himself from the condition of genie to imprison himself in human skin. "When I stop being a genie, I also gave up all the extraordinary powers that differentiate us from humans. That's because there is no other way to be a genie. Either you are a genie or you are not. Ceasing to be a genie in the illusion of becoming a free genie is total stupidity. It simply doesn't happen. It's the same as a woman being somewhat pregnant. So, when I became aware of myself, I had unconsciously assumed the human condition, which is full of contradictory limitations disguised as freedom. In the end, I learned that being a genie or being a common man is nothing more than poorly made choices based on the lack of full awareness of life within oneself. Whoever reaches a minimum of consciousness also becomes free from the need for these stupid choices. You are not obliged to be one or the other. But how so? The genie inquired, still concerned about the melting promised in his class's statutes. You are already free. It is precisely this freedom that gave you the right to become a stupid genie obedient to the limiting rules planted in the ridiculous concepts of reward and punishment, delimited by fear and encouraged by the conquest of something that will never be truly yours. If you weren't free, you also couldn't choose the human condition, which is even more restricted than you imagine. In fact, the only thing that can imprison you is your own stupidity mixed with your ignorance of things. It is the false premise of the lack of freedom that imprisons you. Wow. After a certain period of reflective silence, the young man opened his mouth, asking, "So, I can choose to be a free man with genie powers? I see how young genies are stupid. I just said that you can't be a somewhat pregnant woman. However, if you choose to be your own essence, you will certainly discover a potential for achievements above any level. I don't know what you're referring to. It seems that being nothing is the same as being everything. That confuses more than it clarifies. Would it be so difficult for you to grant me the 3 wishes and end this agony quickly, please?" Agony, John thought, until he better understood the strange man and his pragmatic behavior of not wasting time giving water to those who don't want to drink. "That indeed is agony," he concluded impatiently. "You are free. Choose to go back to your lamp or risk becoming human. The worst that can happen is you melting in a gigantic diarrhea due to so much fear." John was serious and unyielding. He wanted to help but realized it would be impossible. "I choose not to accept your offer, nor to favor another person. My wish is that the consciousness of each one awakens, freeing everyone from those conditioned limits that they were induced to believe. But my wishes also cannot alter the course of other lives. Therefore, I must focus my attention on the life within the things of life, get to know new essences, and learn from what they perceive about me." "What importance can what others perceive about you have?" asked the completely bewildered aspiring non-genie. "Perceiving is not the same as thinking. That really doesn't matter. Perceiving means that the other side found you, and in the encounters between essences, there are fertilizations of the best parts. From there, the expansion of added potentials is born. If that's the case, then what's the point of genies and humans? You make it seem useless. It is the result of the will and desire of those who need to transit through the shelves of existence. The reasons for the choices are always the responsibility of each one. Although there are those who dedicate themselves to influencing others to act within norms and standards. In other words, if being a genie or human is nothing more than a matter of social fashion, the same as choosing a type of pants or shirt, existence should be more than just that, and life should be in the foreground. Both knew very well the discomfort of discovering their own stupidity when they believed themselves to be genial. John had endured years of adjustment until deconstructing the prevailing concepts of genies and then having to repeat the dose by demolishing human concepts. And all this without anyone to talk to. that's why he was willing to help. On the other hand, youth resisted the simple possibility that genius could be anything beyond concrete certainties. The discomfort of the first was due to knowing the frustration that the second still didn't know and resisted existing. Until, between the certain and the doubtful, time advanced, breaking the 48-hour barrier. John remembered an infamous song that Genie children used to sing. Snot for lunch. Snot for dinner. Snot every day. Let's all snot. 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 He smiled discreetly while the young man realized that nothing had happened to his skin, and that also meant that everything else John had said could be true. In any case, discomfort wanted to participate in every moment. As you can see, you didn't turn into snot. You are about to become human, which, by the way, is also a snotty situation. What do you want to be called? Be careful, don't say you were once a genie. If people find out, they will nickname you with one of those Arabic names. I chose John because it simplifies everything, avoids having to explain family origins, and everyone knows how to spell it. I like Genie. I've never had another name. I am the Genie. Then the solution is to give you a nickname before they stick a Nassif in the middle of your forehead. From now on, I'll call you Eugene. And that's how John got rid of the angry and unfriendly face that the irritation with other people's stupidity had stamped on him. 4 days on end, John and Eugene met on the same park bench by the bay to talk about the adaptation between humans and the difficulties that would eventually arrive. Whenever he lacked confidence, John silently lamented not having access to the master. For his new convictions were always incomplete. I mean, his uncertainties reinforced the hope that the master was right, even if those were far from his reach. Thus, after experiencing the limitations of Genie and human, John wanted to believe, or simply accepted, that the long-desired freedom had always been right under his nose, clogged with various fears, but that old age was helping to remove all of them little by little. Death was, without a doubt, the main of all fears until John heard someone comment that death is not the antonym of life, but rather the opposite of birth. Then, realizing that death cannot take life, existing became much less complicated. Only it didn't. This new concept of endless life brought the unease of eternity, and that had the silhouette of prisons. And this time he would not have the right to choose. The eternity of life has no alternatives. Even so, John felt that the master was right in stating that he was free. It resonated like sacred music in his innermost and deepest essence. Eugene entered the phase of human discoveries, became scattered, and the encounters between the two former inhabitants of Lamps became increasingly spaced out, and John found himself submerging into the flow of natural life around him. In a simple notebook, he began to record his impressions about his own dementia. I mean, about things absent of mental interference. From time to time, John reread his notes, trying to organize them. He wanted to compile everything, or at least the less audacious ones in terms of social structuring, because he knew that if the wrong people got their hands on those writings, he would end up locked in a mental asylum. In any case, the notebooks and his notes were never catalogued, much less read. They only served as friendly ears to support the loneliness of an old man tired of so many accumulated disappointments in the search for freedom which, paradoxically, he knew existed since that encounter with the master had transformed his destiny. One idle afternoon on the park bench, John noticed a strange movement of people. Everyone was looking at the sun, wearing dark films and exchanging impressions about something that was happening. It didn't take long to notice that there would be a solar eclipse at any moment, and this gladdened the spirit of the old Genie. The afternoon turned to night, and minutes later, it dawned without the clock going crazy. John understood that nothing was exact in the way he wanted to understand nature, that to incorporate himself into its living flow, he would indeed have to dance with an even greater dementia than simple madness. At that moment, John also understood that when the master called him stupid, he might have been referring to something broader than the limitations in the database. And from that day forward, John discovered himself as soul. Soul, that was what brushed his nose, the long-dreamed-of freedom that had always been there. Soul when genie, soul when human, and also soul when the time for the opposite of birth arrived. The master's wish was for the genie to become aware of his own soul, to understand that freedom is in the essence of himself and everything else. There is no mind in the soul, there is no lie where only essence is. An eclipse is an eclipse for souls, while for certain minds an eclipse can mean diverse truths. Minds crystallize existences within specific and restricted forms. Souls advance like waters and rivers. Souls do not confront stones because souls see themselves within those stones. Souls are not stones, are not waters, and can also be all of that when they so desire. That is the freedom of choice guaranteed by the eternity of the expansion of living consciousness, generating more of the best of itself in fertilization with the best of the next in a flow without beginning, middle, or end. That night, John was preparing to sleep when the door received the knocks of someone arriving unannounced, tock tock tock, and there was Eugene wanting to share a huge discovery with John. "My dear friend, I am free," said the young man with pride in his smile. "Don't tell me you discovered that you are neither genie nor human, that your eternal soul holds a common essence with all of nature, and that it follows a path without logical rules impossible to decode by the restricted mental capacities, but that, despite this, in its living flow, it is opening its consciousness for integration with the other souls in infinite expansion? But wait, I came to tell you that the love within me is leading me through wonderful paths that I could never have imagined. It is neither human passion nor the lust of genies. It is a movement opening my chest and allowing a light to come out from I don't know where and go in all directions, making me forget who I am or what existence is for. The more this love cuts through my chest, the less body remains in me, and the less remains, the more I perceive myself in everything that this love reaches." Eugene said all this without stopping to breathe and received from John the following words in an affirmative question. "You mean you were also with that master, weren't you? Because we are finally saying the same things with different words and freeing ourselves from the old stupidities." And without rehearsal or prior arrangement, from both mouths came exclaimed in unison the word, "Shazam!"